Welcome back to Amplifying Our Voices. I'm your host, Patty Hayak. Thank you for tuning in. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine who truly inspires me. David went from having a big title, living a life that looked perfect on paper, to walking away from it all in search of something deeper, like joy, presence, happiness. In this conversation, he shares how burnout and travel reshaped his identity, his values, and the definition of happiness. We talk about mental health, starting over, finding community, and building a life that truly feels good on the inside. I'm so excited for you to hear his story. With that, let's dive in. David, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I am so excited to have others learn about your story. I like to start off with, where does your story begin?
I mean, the early days, from what I thought, I lived like a normal life. Parents were fine. School was fine. I did really, really well in school. School was easy. Graduated high school, did what I thought I was supposed to do, had a full ride academic scholarship, went to university. And that's when I first started working. It was just kind of a part-time job while I was in college. It was a summer job, turned into a college job, I lost my scholarship because college is a little bit trickier than high school. I wanted to go to college. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Took me a little while longer than the 4-year degree, but graduated like I was supposed to. And at that point, like I was making more money at my job. I was having more fun at my job. So I decided, let's pursue this job. Pretty traditional high school, basically college internship career, and that took me through 23 years of my life. Grew up in Utah, moved to Las Vegas, and that was great. With over 1,000 stores, I was able to just keep transferring, whether I was bored, whether it was an opportunity, whether it was a girl I was following. Basically 23, graduated. That's kind of when I was like, okay, this is a career for me now. And then moved all over, was never in a serious relationship for a while. So I wasn't really limited by family or children by that matter. So I basically kind of moved all over the United States, taking various promotions, moved up to a pretty good spot. And yeah, 30 years old, I'm in a serious relationship. I moved from Utah to Vermont to be closer to my girlfriend's family, to potentially start a family. And that's basically kind of what I thought life was supposed to be, was on paper. Good job, girlfriend, house, everything was supposed to be okay, but quite frankly, I wasn't happy. Work was draining. My work-life balance was pretty not balanced. This is what's so clear now, was like, I thought it was okay that I was always on my phone. And I remember I was always getting in fights, like, get off your phone. Why are you? Oh, it's work. It's work. It's okay. It's just a customer. Oh, it's just my employee. But like, that's kind of where things started going wrong, at least in the relationship, was I was prioritizing work over family. And then eventually the hours were very long, not being able to sleep, because at this point I'm managing stores that are open from 6 a.m. until 2 a.m., sometimes 24 hours during the holidays, phones always going off. And then, yeah, like after years of doing that, it just kind of wore on me. And eventually that relationship kind of failed. And then I found myself across the world with a job, but not a lot of friends, because I was just so busy working and so busy with the relationship. So all I had was a job. And I realized like that was my identity, was I was a manager at this company. And yeah, I was pretty burnt out. And I decided to quit. And it was really, really hard for me because I was comfortable. I was making more money than I could have ever imagined. I had a nice house. Again, on paper, it was what people dreamed of, but I was in such a bad spot. I didn't really know it then. Looking back, it was
Mhm.
very clear, but I was nervous. Like, yeah, I ended up quitting, walked away from that, sold my house. And initially, I always had dreams to travel. When I was a kid, I lived in Mexico for a while, and it kind of opened my eyes to different cultures, different countries, different people, life just outside of America. And I knew I wanted to do more. And I always just had this dream of traveling Southeast Asia. So
Mhm.
that's what I did. Was I quit my job and I booked a one-way ticket to actually Thailand. Started in Thailand for 3, 4 weeks, then Vietnam, then Japan. Then I went home for Christmas, and I was supposed to start a new job, completely different career. I was interviewing for
Right.
jobs. And then, yeah, I basically got certs to go change a career. I had a full-time job offer at a pretty good job, and I turned it down. And I knew that I just wasn't quite ready to settle down yet and go back to normal corporate life. So I set back out, and yeah, New Zealand, Australia, Indonesia. And my entire plan was, I'm just going to quit my job, travel the world for a year and get perspective. Because I will tell you, like, there's one I tell people all the time, like, what really made you realize this? And I remember I was
Mhm.
in Vietnam and I was on a food tour, and this lady was basically just taking me through all the streets of Vietnam, giving me all of her recommendations. And I remember she was telling me she has a full-time job, but she doesn't make enough money. So this is how she supports her kid, is doing this food tour. And in the middle of the food tour, she had a FaceTime in. It was her kid. And it was like 7 p.m. and her daughter was just getting home from school, and her daughter was happy, laughing. And the mom was happy and laughing, and single mother, only child. And I'm like, if this mom who has to work, 15 hours a day, and this child who's home alone at 12 years old at 7 p.m. are happy, like, there has to be more to life than what I've been doing. I have it all. I have the car. I have the house. I have the paycheck. I don't have to live paycheck to paycheck, but yet I'm miserable. I'm not literally, but I'm
Mhm.
figuratively dying in the inside. So that's kind of what triggered me to continue and travel. And then I accidentally became a dive instructor. Like, fast forward 2 degrees, loads of experience, and I'm making close to 2,000 US dollars a month living in remote islands in the world, teaching people how to dive. And I'm happier than I've ever been.
I love that. This is exactly why when I God put it in my heart to start a podcast, and your story was one of the first stories that came to my mind of stories that I wanted to elevate, because I agree with you. I think there's so much to life. Like, we get to define what happiness is and what joyful living is. Now, I do want to go a little bit back to that moment where you had success on paper. You had the big leadership role, you had the car, the money, you had success as society defines it on paper. At what point, like, what was that moment that you were able to say, okay, I'm quitting? Was it like a little voice in your head that just kind of kept popping up? Was it something physical in your body? Was it a combination? Like, how did you know that it was time for you to move on?
A lot of it just comes down to mental health. And I will tell you, like, I was at a breaking point for a very, very long time, but I just kept going through and hoping it would get better, but not doing the work. And eventually I actually ended up finding a really, really good therapist. And I was chatting her about my failing relationship, about my job that's draining me, and her advice, which it's taken a lot of time. And even today, I'm so much more clear. And this has been 5 years at this point, but you can always go back. You can walk away from a job. You can walk away from a relationship. This is something I've gotten very clear of. And I've tried to get clear, but are you in love with the job or the idea of what the job can provide for you as far as income, stability, safety? And are you in love with this person, or are you in love with what this person can provide to you? And, I'll speak more about the job, but like, you can find a job that can give you an income, that can give you flexibility. It may not be the exact job. I think for me, I was so caught up with, oh my God, like, I can't walk away. I'll never find anything like this. But again, I just, on the inside, I was just so unhappy that once I realized, like, all I had was my job and my house, but I had no friends because I kept moving for a job or for a girlfriend. I found myself in Vermont with no friends, no family, and a job. So the only thing I knew at the time was I needed to be around friends and family. And that took me back to Utah. My initial plan, really, I didn't really know what to do. All I knew is I just needed to be around a good support system. And then as time went on, that's kind of where I got curious with traveling, started researching it. But for me, it was just, I can't continue doing this.
Mhm.
It was funny when I quit, I actually ended up having people message me like, David, you finally did it. Congratulations. I don't know what's in store for you, but you've been talking about how unhappy you are for 5 years and you finally did it.
Wow,
But
that's
it wasn't
amazing. Thank
easy.
you for sharing. Oh, I bet. And you also mentioned a little bit about struggling with your identity. I think that's something that people can relate to, where they identify as their title. Talk to me about that journey, about rediscovering who David is.
I think that's kind of what travel did for me. And again, I'll speak from my experiences, and you can take them or leave them how you will. But I feel like in Western cultures, specifically America, you're at a dinner, you're at a game, you meet friends of friends. And the very first thing is, what's your name? What do you do for a living? And once I traveled, I met people. I was traveling with broke backpackers that were eating at a buffet as much as they could. So, because they didn't have enough money. So they would try to eat for 2 days straight at a free buffet to save money. Like, nobody cares what you do for a living. The only thing people care about is, are you nice and Do you give people energy or do you take away energy? Like, that's kind of what drives me as far as my identity. At the end of the day, no one, and people have said it, whether it's at leadership conferences or what, but nobody's going to remember what you did for a living or what people just remember how you made them feel. For me, that's just all I want to do is just surround myself with people that give me energy and hopefully give energy to other people. Like when you die, you're not taking money with you to the grave. Nobody's posting your bank statement and your obituary.
Right. Now tell me a little bit about what did travel or yeah, what did travel teach you that no classroom or job could ever teach you?
I mean, for me, and again, this is very specific to me, but I've lived my whole life planning. I plan and I have a plan for a backup plan, for a failed plan, for another plan. And it's exhausting and it is so stressful trying to have a plan for a plan and try to predict the future. And on one hand, it's made me very successful. And I attribute a lot of my success to living in the future and trying to be 6 steps ahead of everything. But quite frankly, with travel, you can't do it. I remember when I first started traveling, I had everything pre-booked, flights, hotel. And then as time went on, I just realized everyone's different. Like, there's places that everybody said, you have to go here, and I hated it. And there's other places that people are like, yeah, this place sucks, but I loved it. So after, giving up about 6 or 7 different plane tickets and missing all of my trips, I finally just stopped planning and I would literally just live my life like 2 days at a time. And I would just book a one-way ticket, book a hotel for 2 days. If I liked it, I would stay. If I didn't, I would pack up and leave. And I really just try to apply that logic to my life now. I just moved to Thailand 3 weeks ago and now I'm in the process of getting a work visa and a 1-year permit. But at the end of the day, like, if I don't like it, I can always just leave. And for me, like, that's kind of been a guiding principle. Before this, I was in Indonesia for 3 years and I loved it over there. And it was really hard for me to even leave Indonesia. But at the same time, like, everybody's like, David, you can always come back. Just because you're leaving doesn't mean you can't come back. I'm happy for now. I'm content for now. Doesn't mean this is what I want to do the rest of my life. But again, I guess kind of the way I measure happiness, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a job, is do I have more good days than bad days?
Mhm.
And right now, I love it.
Tell me about how did being immersed in other cultures expand your definition of home? Or what does home look like now? Has your definition of home changed?
That's a hard one because I will tell you, I still struggle because home will always be Utah. It's going to be my family. It's going to be my sisters. It's still my good friends. But at the same time, I remember just a year ago, I went back to home, Utah, for the first time in 2 years. And after about 6 days, I realized, and you can take this however you will, I realized I missed Indonesia more than I missed home. And that's kind of when I
Mhm.
started realizing that home is just where you feel safe and you have a community. And I will tell you specifically, I'll keep talking about Indonesia because I spent so much time there. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. Everybody's so willing to help each other. There's no hierarchy, whether you're above someone, below someone. The amount of people that I've just randomly met and they invite me to their house and it's just an incredible dinner and there's no phones. Everybody's sharing food. Everybody's sharing stories. Like, there's no tables. We're literally sitting on the floor on a table mat, eating with our hands, but it's just such a good bonding experience. It feels good. It's just being around people and just sharing stories and moments. And again, just being present in the moment because I've struggled with it again, even during this podcast. Like I'm having a conversation with you, but my brain's thinking of what do I need to do the rest of the night? What's my, is my phone going off for tomorrow? What do I need to get done? So it's just been an ongoing problem with me. But again, and I don't know how much of it's a Western thing versus a me thing, living on this side of the world, it's just eating around friends and family. And again, I'm perfectly fine going out to dinner by myself 2, 3 times a week. I'll just meet up with some friends. We'll have a nice dinner, catch up. That's it.
I'm sure you have learned to make friends wherever you go. So I love this for you.
Well, to answer your question too, you mentioned, I'm sure you've made a lot of friends, which is true, but I will tell you, that was one of the hard parts with traveling was I was constantly packing, unpacking, leaving. Basically, you're just in a place for 3 to 7, 3 to 2 weeks. So by the time you finally meet someone, it's time to leave or they're leaving. So it was actually really hard. And that's kind of what actually kind of drew me to diving was I had never dived before. And I came across Indonesia, very specific little island called Gili Trawangan. And it's a diving island. I walked into a dive shop and to be honest, I just booked to stay there, but my plan was to never dive. And I just was hanging out with some people and we started chatting. I ended up booking a dive course because I love nature. I love outdoors. One course turned into another course. And I just remember I was chatting with, and these guys are amazing. Maybe they'll listen to it. I'll send them the note. But like Alex and Josh, like I remember I was just chatting with them one day and I said, wow, this is so cool. I wish I could live here. And Alex is from Canada. Josh is from America. And they'd been living in Indonesia for 2 to 5 years, depending on who. And they said, well, why don't you? I said, I can't live here. And I know it's so difficult for people to just leave their country and come live in America and work legally. I'm not here to get into that at all. But what I do know is I'm framed by my own ignorance and by the way things work. It took some time, but they actually helped me. They taught me, hey, here's how tourist visas work. Here's how working visas work. And initially, I just had a long enough holiday visa to where I could live there for, I think it was like 6 months just as a tourist legally. And then during that time, I did a whole bunch of courses, started diving, did my first professional dive course. To be honest, I never really wanted to get back to work. My plan was just to retire. And I remember the dive shop owner basically just asked me, hey, Dave, you ever going to teach for me again? I don't really want to teach. I just want to dive by myself and with my friends. Then eventually I decided, you know what? I miss teaching. Like even in my old American job, what gave me energy was teaching people how to sell, teaching people how to process, just in general. I love teaching people. I guess just I could only stay out for so long. So I basically did my instructor, became a full-time diving teacher, and it was fun. I always tell people it was the best job in the world because at the end of the day, it still feels like I'm on holiday. I live on an island, teach people, I meet people from all over the world. I'm constantly learning new things about cultures. But at the same time, it fills that gap, the transient relationships as far as full-time travel. So it's the best of both worlds. I have my own community that lives on the island. I have my locals. I have the expats that are also teaching. But then I have the tourists that come and go that make things interesting. So it really was the best of both worlds. And you don't actually know this, Patty, but I came out to Thailand 3 weeks ago, and my plan was just to be a diving instructor. And 2 days into work, the dive shop owner pulled me aside and asked me/told me I should manage his dive shop. And I said, nah, I don't really want to manage. Like those managing days are done. I got enough problems myself. I don't want to deal with other people's problems. And I will tell you, like, this is where I'm very proud of what I've learned, but I basically sat down. I didn't give him a yes. I sat down, I wrote down pros, cons, and specifically what I need from a boundaries, because I've learned so many things about what I need in a job and specific start time, end time, not being on call. But I basically sat down with him and I said, here's my conditions on working. If you can meet them, I'll gladly be your manager. And he was more than happy to meet them. We changed up a few things, and now I actually manage and run a dive shop.
I love that so much. Thank you for that. Okay, tell me a little bit. You talked a little bit about your previous leadership role. I want to know, what transferable skills do you use from your previous role into now managing the shop and being an instructor and all the things that you're doing?
I mean, I think just the biggest thing is just customer service and just the ability to just make people, again, I always tell people don't buy products, people buy people. And that's all it is. Like, it's just being able to have a conversation, get to understand people. And I will tell you, like, working in diving is the easiest thing in the world because I truly believe in everything I do. Like, at the end of the day, me selling a diving course, diving changed my life. And I can't tell you how many people that I have met that I've taught, and I'll just kind of explain it, and I won't bore you with the technicalities, but open water diver is the very first certification you can get in diving. And I've met so many of my students that were open water divers. And then fast forward a year later, they come back to visit me, they do their professional course, and then they're working as my coworkers. So like the fact that I get to sell people on a lifestyle and a dream that I'm living, like it's the easiest thing in the world to sell. So yeah, I mean, the transferable skills are just selling, obviously, and then just customer relationship, and then management, obviously the scheduling, the budgeting, it's all the same thing. Like the scope is easy, but for me, what gives me energy is meeting people. And now at this point, I've been doing this for so long, I can give them other recommendations. My favorite are when my students message me and they'll send me a photo like, oh my God, I took your advice. I went to the Philippines, I went to the Maldives, and I dived with this stuff as well. So it's the same stuff that we all know what to do. Sell a product, give them recommendations on what to do, but it's stuff that's literally changing people's lives.
I love that. What does being underwater teach you about leadership or presence or humanity? Or what does just being underwater teach you in general?
I mean, for us, just in the grand scheme of things, we were just very, very small. I mean, the ocean's just insane. And I've swam with massive sharks, whales, all kinds of things. Physically, we're just a very small piece of the earth. But at the same time, like I've been around places long enough to see like what happens with climate change and like what happens with overpopulating and building. And, perfect example is the last island I lived on, one of the best places in the world to see turtles. And they've done a good job. They are very serious and they monitor who's building on the land and how much land is available without having buildings, chairs, and whatnot. Because what these, I'll give you an example. Turtles need open sand to come up to the sand and lay their eggs so they can produce offspring, obviously. And they do a good job. Like, I can't tell you, it's the coolest thing watching mama turtles come onto the beach, lay eggs, and then 90 days later, you have over 100 to 300 little tiny baby turtles come down. And as an example of where, we have done a very good job of protecting Earth. But on the flip side, the island I'm living on now is called Koh Tao, which means Turtle Island. But unfortunately, there's no turtles anymore because what we've done here is we've overpopulated, we've overbuilt. And now as a result, these turtles can't come to this island anymore and lay their eggs. So now nobody sees turtles anymore here. So like that's a
Oh,
very big example is our actions really do have consequences. And again, you can take it for how you want to, as far as it can one person make a big difference. But I will tell you, you've heard about straws, you've heard about plastic bottles, you've heard about bottle caps. But I'll tell you, I've done enough beach cleanups to know bottle caps, cigarette butts, and plastic bottles absolutely cause a massive problem.
thank you for that reminder because it is our job to take care of this earth. And I also love that you mentioned that we are just a tiny piece. I love when I fly over the ocean, I just feel so tiny. I can only imagine what it must feel like diving and seeing the whole world that's underneath. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
What would you say to someone who feels stuck?
You're not alone. The amount of people that I've met, they're like, oh my God, I felt this exact same way. Everybody has their own journey. Everybody has their own story. I'll share my most recent story. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was diving in Indonesia. I accidentally became a dive instructor. The plan was never to live there for 3 years, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew I needed to do something different, but I wasn't sure if it was keep diving, go back to America, spend time with family. And I was just kind of stuck and I couldn't make a decision. And then I had a friend just told me at the end of the day, America, Utah will always be there for you. Indonesia will always be there for you. And when it comes to your job, like there are some very good jobs that are irreplaceable, but the majority of the time, it's not the job, it's what the job provides. It's the coworkers, it's your boss, it's the money, it's the freedom, it's the flexibility. And when you actually slow things down, this whole idea of am I in love with the object or am I in love with the idea of the object? And when you really slow down, most of the time it's the idea of things, at least for me. So that was kind of what gave me this nudge to do this next chapter. Eventually that was the nudge of me quitting my job and becoming a dive instructor was just try it. If it doesn't work out, you'll always have you can always go back to it.
Right. That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder of take that leap, take that risk. You can always go back. What is something that you had to unlearn, or what is something that you had to let go of to make room for this new life?
Oh, planning for the future. On one hand, it has led to a lot of success, but it's also just led to a lot of extra stress. And at least oftentimes now, I just kind of live life week by week, month by month, and try to have more good days than bad days. But I guess if there's one thing I've really learned about living in Southeast Asia is not everybody, right? We do generalize. We shouldn't necessarily. Everybody deserves their own chance. But a lot of people just live in the moment. And I mean, they're not so worried about next week, next month. And even for me, like oftentimes I've sat there trying to plan 6 months out and I don't have the plan. All I can do is stress about it. But then all of a sudden, 2 months later, 3 months later, like, those decisions just get answered either way. So just try to enjoy the present moment instead of always constantly stressing about the future.
Mhm.
Easier said than
And
done. I'm still working on it.
right. Exactly. What do you hope people take away from your story?
I just think that try something different. Like you're never too young to travel. You're never too old to travel. That's the coolest thing is the amount of people I've met traveling, 18-year-olds, 70-year-olds. And oftentimes we get stuck in our own ways and we're worried way more about what other people think of us than what ourselves, and ultimately, you just need to be happy. And even for me, when I first started traveling, everybody thought I was going through a phase, midlife crisis, and now I don't think anybody thinks it's a phase. This is just my life. And again, I'm flexible and I'm open enough to know it could change. I may decide I want to go back to America, start a corporate job next month, next week. But at the end of the day, I'm okay with that. And that goes to the last question. Just enjoy the moment.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. You are the true definition of that you can transform your life at any age. And taking that risk and stepping into the unknown, I'm sure some of it must have been scary, and maybe it still is at times. But you are truly the definition of being present and, living one day at a time. And
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
I will, I knew the David back then when you were struggling, and then I see the David now, and it's amazing to see your transformation. I've told you this many times, but happiness looks really good on you, and I love to see it. I love to keep up with your journey.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, you've been a fan from day one, and it's amazing to connect to you and hear about you and your story. And now you're trying to reach out and give platform for others. And it's amazing. Like I always just tell people, like there's so many types. There's people that you'll enjoy for a couple days. There's people you'll enjoy for a season, and there's people that you'll enjoy the rest of your life. Here we are, almost 4 years later, and we still keep in touch. It's pretty incredible.
Yes.
Considering we're 11 hours apart, we've gotten pretty well at figuring that out.
Thank you again, David. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today to share a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, follow, and share this with someone who might need it. Stay tuned for the next one.